important that I point out on One India to an Indian audience, among others who may be watching it, because you don't seem to understand the gravity of the situation in India, because you have this Soviet Russian romantic, nostalgic view of Moscow. We don't want to see a Europe divided again into an East-West confrontational theater, which is what Putin wants. And it's not a question of provoking him or antagonizing him. Nobody is doing that as such. It is he who has been offensive, going into other people's territories and carving up lands as such.
You are sitting in UK, right? And we are here in India. Of course, we are. If we had to fantasize with the relationship, I think a lot would not have happened. What has happened between India and Russia, of course, India and USA, and Prime Minister Modi going to USA next month. However, a lot has changed since Trump has become the president, and it has changed not on just monthly basis, but on daily basis.
Russia is losing 1,072 casualties a day. It is known in Russian parlance as the meat grinder. Not that it matters to Putin, because, of course, his ego is on the line and his obsession of being another Peter the Great or Catherine the Great. And these, among other notions of Russian nationalism that animate his warped thinking. And Russian economists, just as of July 2025, have informed the Kremlin that they are running a deficit of 45.3 billion pounds. That's 4.88 trillion rubles. Yes, he's managed to pull off a war for 3 years, but I don't think he can continue for a year plus more. Oil sales or not, he simply can't. And what is the Russian economy as we speak? An overheated economy where deficits are running and inflation is in double-digit figures. And the entire economy has been geared into wartime running, with productivity across several sectors, organized sectors of labor, completely depleted, because everyone is into defense procurement and the rest of it. So many sectors have stagnated as such. You ask, what does Russia, what does Europe and the UK want? As Walter mentioned, Finland was practically occupied by Stalin and the Russians. So were the Baltic states. All of them felt the Soviet heel for 40 years. And that is important that I point out on One India to an Indian audience, among others who may be watching it, because you don't seem to understand the gravity of the situation in India, because you have this Soviet Russian romantic, nostalgic view of Moscow. And that, in more ways than one, clouds your thinking about Russia and what others have gone through. East Europeans have gone through under the Soviet heel and under Russia. We don't want to see a Europe divided again into an East-West confrontational theater, which is what Putin wants. And it's not a question of provoking him or antagonizing him. Nobody is doing that as such. It is he who has been offensive, going into other people's territories and carving up lands as such, and to roll back what he calls Russia's deterioration in stature. And somehow this is supposed to bring back Russia's glory by the acts of what he's done in Georgia. What about Kazakhstan, Harsh? Baikonur Cosmodrome, Pankaj, from where Rakesh Sharma lifted off in 1984, which you may remember as an Indian, is part of Kazakh territory. That is sovereign Kazakh territory. The Russians refused to leave Baikonur Cosmodrome until very recently, although Kazakhstan is an independent state. And they are also tinkering there in northern Kazakhstan by antagonizing white Russians, minorities settled there, that these provinces need to be seceded and join the Russian Federation. The man has problems with everyone as such. How exactly does this enhance Russia's stature is anybody's guess. So the point is, you ask what Europe wants. Europe doesn't want to live under a specter of a Soviet shadow once again, when Russia in the last 20 plus years was somewhat limping to normalcy as a normal society. Some modest gains in becoming a transparent, democratic polity with a free press, free judiciary, free elections. All of that, with one stroke in February 2022, has gone off as such. And that is something which you in the world's largest democracy need to understand, but you don't as a rule, because partly your image and viewing is clouded by this sense of Soviet procurement of weapons and the rest of it, and that you feel it's been an all-weather friend for you, which it has not. There have been
Mr. Waghmar, you are sitting in UK, right? And we are here in India. Of course, we are. If we had to fantasize with the relationship, I think a lot would not have happened. What has happened between India and Russia, of course, India and USA, and Prime Minister Modi going to USA next month. However, a lot has changed since Trump has become the president, and it has changed not on just monthly basis but on daily basis. However, we won't agree because we won't agree to the romanticizing of us with Putin. Putin being in criminal court of justice, he has a warrant against him to be arrested, and USA and the West talking to him, trying to convince him that please stop the war. When we asked all the panel that what can you give to Putin or what Putin is going to give in return, what did you say? It was about mercy, that Putin will show mercy by stopping the killings. This is what we got. This is what you are asking from Putin. So it is not that we are romanticizing, but it is the fear of Putin. When he puts Oreshniks, then Trump sends his ships. So we know what happens and how Trump is reacting and how the West is reacting. And it is the elite of the West and the UK and US. And of course, I have been just to France and I know how are the sentiments. It's not the locals who want the fight, but it is only the politicians who want this fight. It is the elite UK and the entire Europe that wants this fight to continue, who wanted to send their soldiers. And when Putin said that it is going to get very wrong for the entire UK and for France, then they took the step back. And here Trump is making the announcements every day. So it is part of the UK and their fantasy or romanticism with Putin, or maybe I should call it as a fear of Putin, because he can do anything any day with his Oreshniks, and one attack and then the entire situation might change. And of course, we know Trump has already said that there could be very serious consequences. This is what Trump said. So who is provoking whom?
Ukraine cannot be wiped off the face of the earth, which is what Putin wants to do.
Of course, but the government can be collapsed. What happened in 2014? And of course, Trump wants someone of his choice again sits there.
But you asked a question about the elites. It's got nothing to do with the elites.
If we talk about the reports, we know that the population of Ukraine has already reduced from 56 million to 28 million. People are leaving Ukraine.
You asked me, you said it's got the elitist Western theaters of the defense establishment or the politicians who want to create this fight or sustain the war. That is not true. We are talking about, for better or for worse, from 1945, wedded to a liberal rules-based governance where you don't just walk into people's territory. You don't want China to walk into Arunachal Pradesh now, do you? Or Aksai Chin, though it's occupying a part of it. So, I mean, I would expect you to understand that this is
then we have to discuss the entire Palestine and what United Nations did in the past.
Yeah,
right?
So, okay, fair enough.
So of course we should not deviate from there. But I don't think that India is not getting enough information and still fantasizing what is USSR. Things have moved quite forward. And of course, we are sitting here getting guests from all the directions because we want to have different views from all the places.
You still tend to have a slightly romantic view of Moscow.
That is going to stay because like Elon Musk has his romanticism with Mars. Of course, we share history. They are much closer country to us than USA or the Europe. So of course that is going to be there. We share a lot of culture and tradition. Raj Kapoor, Indian movies, they are quite famous there. We have our soft power. Indians go to study in Russia to become doctors. So there is a lot that we share.
Many more Indians study in the US to be doctors, by the way.
Of course.
In India. And the Indian community.
But that started like in the last 2-3 decades. But Russia people have been going from 70s. And, when we were students, and I was also unfortunately trying to be a doctor. And this was one of the options, the cheaper options.
Air India doesn't fly to Moscow anymore, but it flies 54 times a week to the US.
So you're proving my point. We are not romanticizing with this country.
And you fly 7 times a day to London. So you should know where your bread is buttered.
Well, bread and butter as far as the UK is concerned, I think UK is and should be more worried about its own resources now after Brexit.
And that you're fighting the Pakistani crowd. And we saw the visuals on of Manchester and what was happening. The entire crowd of Pakistan shouting Pakistan Zindabad on the streets of Manchester. It looked like Islamabad.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.